Well. We weren't disappointed this Wheel of Time Wednesday, were we? After yesterday's tease, today has brought us our first look at what we can expect to see from the prop department in terms of the weaponry on the show. But not only that, it's a look at a Heron marked sword nonetheless. Notice I hesitate to say that it's Tam and Rand's Heron marked sword. I'll get into that a little later. And to top it off, Rafe has kindly gone and answered 10 questions from us fans regarding the production design on the show, which I'll be going over as it gives us some new insights into their thinking and direction that they'll be taking the show towards. So briefly, here are my thoughts on the design of the blade. Well, to begin with, even though in the VT they used source material from the books where Tam's Heron marked sword is described, I don't actually believe this to be Tam and Rand's Heron marked sword that is being shown in this clip. Now, I could be completely wrong on that assumption, and it does turn out to be Rand's sword, but we can't forget that their sword isn't the only Heron marked sword in the whole of the Westlands. We know that there are 13 other blade masters in the whole of the Westlands that this particular Heron marked sword could belong to, so it's my guess that it's most likely to be from one of them. Perhaps a certain someone. I also find this particular sword to be much too plain for it to be Rand's. I've always thought of Rand's Heron marked sword to be somewhat more grandiose. To me, this has much more of a feel of an understated Heron marked blade, and it's something that I would consider to be more akin to being Lan's. But the overall design of the blade I do like. It's very elegant, and the herons look lovely on the actual steel itself. Before we get into the main bulk of this, which is a Q&A, I did release a video maybe a week or so ago. It didn't really get picked up either by the YouTube algorithm or perhaps because I haven't been posting quite so much on the channel. I'll leave a link in the description so you can go and check that out. So the first question comes from Nakomi, and it is: have you filmed any of the pre-production, design, manufacturing of props, etc. for a behind-the-scenes program? I have to say, I really hope so. And Rafe responded, of course! An amazing team has been picking up as much as they can of the process so that after the show's aired, you can see all the work and love that went into creating these details, large and small. Next up, we have Eri. What balance are you striking between recreating what's in the books word for word and letting the artists have creativity? And Rafe responded with, what's really important to me is that when we're diverging from the books that we know we're doing it. So every piece of production design from shoes to swords to the White Tower itself begins with pages of quotes from the books about that place or thing. The designer then takes it from there to build something that makes sense in our world, with our production concerns, our cast, our aesthetic, etc. But at the end of the day, it all stems from that first document and it's something we can always go back to. Next up, we have Natro. And their question is, will Moraine still have a staff at the outset? I know she says it helps her to focus, but seeing as how she just tossed it aside after it was charred coming out of the waist and she never replaced it, it doesn't really seem necessary. And Rafe's response to this question is, we're approaching this as an adaptation of the entire series, not just each book individually, so hopefully season 1 will feel more like the entire book series of Wheel of Time than it does like Eye of the World. With that in mind, no Moraine stuff. No Moraine staff. Let chaos ensue. Masso asks, since we are on the topic of swords, what are some of the inspirations for armor design? Is there quite a variation between the Andoran and Shienaran armor? Yes, our costume team led by the amazing Isis Musistin started by building a map of the entire Wheel of Time world, carving out what each nation or culture looked like to make sure they differentiated and honouring what's in the books, and then diving back into Two Rivers. Mike asks, weapons and their individualistic characteristics are integrals to particular characters, especially with Rand, Matt and Perrin. Will the show give a similar focus, or will the weapons mostly just be there? You cannot even imagine the number of hours that goes into each person's weapon. I was in at least 20 meetings about the dagger that Ed Green has, and that's not even a major weapon in the books. There's a whole team of people, and we have a few big book fans on the props team. Looking at every item held by an actor on the show, I'd be shocked if less than 10,000 woman/man hours were spent on the design and creation of the Heron Mark sword. Next question comes from Jack Fogarty, and he asks, how is the set for the Two Rivers designed architecturally? It would seem easy to make it homely and medieval, but because of its location and history, are there any other inspirations coming into play? When the books came out, they felt so blazingly fresh and different and new, so we want that same thing to be true of the show. And if you see us leaning away from certain elements in the books, oftentimes it's because audience have now seen them before. Cold Witch asks, how do you decide what needs to be physically made, like the sword, and what's going to be effects? Rafe replied, I want things to be as real as possible, so in any place that we possibly can, we've built things instead of trusting to effects. Our show could be all green screen, or CGI, but I think you'll be surprised by how much of it was actually built and touched and held by our actors. Next up, we have a question from Kevin. How are the sword forms going to be presented? Is the style going to be pulled from a specific region of sword fighting, or are they going to be spread out over many regions? Rafe said, we have a fight time and sword master on the show who has built a fighting style unique to each weapon and culture. So, if you see a Borderlander fight with a Heron Mark blade, it may feel different than a Sauntian. That's merely hypothetical, of course. Lucky Mandragoran asks the music. How is that related to the show? Did we just glimpse a theme of the music? This is not music from the show itself. When it is, I'll make sure you know it. And it will hopefully feel very uniquely Wheel of Time. Alan Mandragoran asks, will there be different styles of swords in Heron Mark swords, or are all of them going to be in a katana style? Many different styles, which this answer plays into my thinking behind that particular sword in the VT does not belong to Rand and Tam. And I believe that quite possibly is the last question. Alright guys, well that's the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Please leave a like if you have, and let me know your thoughts on today's review. What do you make of the katana, i.e. the Heron Mark blade that was shown to us today? Do you like it? What are your thoughts? Do you dislike it? I'll see you all in the next video.